Thank you very much, Oyemi Ajayi, for the background report. Let me quickly start to introduce the guest from the studio here. We have joining us Reverend Korede Martins. Reverend Korede Martins is also a development expert. Reverend Martins, thank you for joining us this morning.
I appreciate being here. Thanks for inviting me.
And also from our Maiduguri studio is Dr. Saleh Mamale, who is from the academics. He's a very known face. Dr. Mamale, it's a pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me.
And also joining us for the conversation via Zoom all the way from Canada is Dr. Chidia Madwekwe, former Director, Media, Buhari Support Organization. Many thanks for joining us, Doctor.
Thank you, and it's my pleasure having me here.
All right, I'd like to start from Maiduguri studio with Dr. Saleh Mamale. Dr. Saleh, I did a little bit of, research, but even the research is something that we all know. Former President Muhammadu Buhari, has this towering stature, and when you talk about his demeanor, very stoic, a man of, paradox, if you ask me. Many people may, whether they like it or not, may dislike him, but you cannot not like him on the other hand. But let's begin with your own perspective. How did the former president come to you?
Morning, and our condolence to Nigerians. Mr. President, who I believe is in a deep state of mourning. His immediate family, and to the vast majority of Nigerians and other people across the world. Like you said, the former and late President, Muhammadu Buhari, is one of Nigeria's foremost leaders. We need to contextualize many of them within the context of the situation they found themselves at a very early stage of their lives. Destiny bestowed on them very high responsibilities. Responsibilities of the nation, responsibilities of governance, and responsibilities of making very hard decisions at very critical times. And like I said, we all know the history of the colonial period and the immediate post-independence Nigeria. When Nigeria was forming its armed forces, they happened to be among the crop of Nigerians that were recruited as officers into the Nigerian army. And with developments that happens in the immediate post-independence Nigeria, the change of government in 1966, and the events that follows afterward, you will be able to see and visualize them in that context. And it is from there that you will be able to understand the nature of the personalities that took the responsibility of managing Nigeria with limited experience, with limited resources, and of course, with limited guidance and wisdom from elders, unlike what we have today, where you have people in their 60s, in their 70 years, 80 years, guiding the younger generation. At that time, they took responsibilities, some of them right even in their 20s and 30s, most of them. Only few of them were up to 40 years at that time. So Muhammadu Buhari, for those who know him, is a rare personality, a gentleman, a personality of wisdom and vision and a patriot to the core. Among Nigerians that I have interacted with, he is one rare person with the courage, the determination, and having Nigeria in his heart. This is who the late president is, and that is the legacy he lived on, and that's the legacy he passed on.
Dr. Momale, for your opening comments, let's get to Dr. Maduekwe now before we return to the studio. Dr. Maduekwe, you worked with the former president directly. You were a former director of media, Buhari Support Organization. I'd like you to tell us, to you, who was the man, Buhari?
For having me and my condolence to the First Lady, the people of Nigeria, and the people of Dahara. Actually, President was the Colossus, unlike the proverbial to a blind man trying to understand the various forms and shapes of the elephant. We are bound to interpret him from different prisms, different understanding, based on the angle we are able to touch him. But the core thing about his personality that for the period I worked with him was I understood that he was a man that was very much deep in a stoic nature, in a stoic character. Stoicism was his anchor. So he believed in integrity, patriotism, and the pursuit of whatever goal he has with passion, and then committed to ensuring that particularly the downtrodden, were affected in a manner that there could be humanity again being brought to the front burner. And he lived all his life trying to do that. Many people may come with different angle of perception. Like I said, he's a colossus, and so we are bound to see him from different angles. He's a committed man. You can't take away his integrity from him, no matter how much we may want to, brush him otherwise. In the first place, when he was the military head of state, we heard the news that he didn't put himself as, he wasn't a participant of the coup, but he was asked to come and be the military head of state. And the only thing that made that possible was his integrity. And so when he became the military head of state and wanted to act according to the norms and ethics of his integrity, and then we know what happened when he was, taken away again. Coming as a man who now taken Abuja to pursue leadership role, he continued with that mantra of his integrity and wanting to rule now as a converted Democrat. He wanted to govern as a converted Democrat, whereby you cannot be judged guilty, you cannot be locked into the detention and said you are guilty until proven innocent. But right now, you are innocent until you are proven. Again, we now claim he was Baba Gospel. He could not deliver on his promise and all that kind of thing. That's why I say we as to a blind man are bound to see him from different angle. And but we need to understand the contraption of leadership followership. If we are to interface it properly, then we'll also know that as followership, we on our own probably have some failures whereby we are not in a position to appreciate him. But on the long run, I think history is bound to judge him on the long run positively, because again, that's what's been happening in Nigeria. When the former civilian government of Shehu Shagari was taken out of office, it was because we felt that it was the worst government we could ever have at that time. But along the line, we were happy when the military came. But again, as soon as the military could settle, we felt it was the worst military administration. And then when IBB came, everybody was happy, we jubilated. But before IBB finished, again, we felt it was a very bad government. I wouldn't want it. We moved on to Abacha, the same thing. We moved on even to Obasanjo. It was only after Obasanjo level we started. So this is the problem we have about followership. So on the long run, I think we have to understand that we must be able to give honor to whom honor is due, and honor is due to him multiple times. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you, Doctor. Let's return now to the studio. Reverend, and I'm glad that you are a reverend, and also a development analyst. Last night I've been listening to, all shades of, comments, tributes, and contribution. And I think yesterday I listened to Pastor Tunde Bakari speak about the former president, attitude, religious side, his own religious side. A lot of people have different views about his religious, stance. Some believe that the former president was a religious hardliner and all that. But listening to Pastor Tunde Bakari, listening to former Minister of State for Education last night talk about, their relationship with the former president gives a different, picture altogether. And that's why initially I said he remained a man of paradox.
He sure remains a man of paradox. First of all, I want to actually express condolences to the family of His Excellency, late President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, and of course to fellow Nigerians and citizens of the world. We must look at one aspect of humanity. Before we believe whatever you want about a person, you have to look at the history, how that person, came about, the formation, of the personality. As a teenager, he was in the military, became, a commissioned officer, and gradually so, he assumed leadership roles. He became a federal commissioner, that is, federal minister today of petroleum. His antecedents are there to show. In 1985, we saw what he did, by actually rebuilding, giving us a new and an enlarged, refinery in Port Harcourt, and quite a number of projects on 3 occasions where he himself did not say, I want to become the leader. His colleagues, both in the military and even, in the not too distant future, in the conglomerate, the coalition that, was formed as APC, said he should become the candidate, and he won at the primaries. This is somebody who had been very tolerable when it comes to leadership. Now, coming to his religious beliefs, President Muhammadu Buhari was a Muslim by every respect, and nobody has any evidence that he, in person, had given order or instruction to anybody to vilify Christians in this country. But people could decide to believe whatever it is they want to believe, and they have rights to express themselves. Governance and leadership in governance comes with challenges per time. Wherever you are, be it in the corporate sector or in the public sector, as a leader, you come up with policies, you come up with ideas, you give instructions, and people carry it out the way they feel they should. When he held sway as Nigeria's head of state in the military, we saw his policies of war against indiscipline. And
those of us, that come from that era,
exactly,
it's an indelible memory.
It is an indelible memory. I was in Lagos, where I was raised, and we saw, price control on commodities, sugar, milk, rice, or whatnot had, benchmark prices affordable to the citizenry. But at venture, you see any, seller of those products in shops now going above the approved prices. Soldiers will march to your shops.
Would you say his policies, to some extent, give us an insight into his kind of personality?
It sure did.
Let's take that why, for instance, war against indiscipline. If you know, in those days, it was a program, that was introduced to curb corruption and indiscipline amongst Nigerians. So this is a man who didn't like indiscipline at all.
He sure did not. He was very frugal, a man that was disciplined, a man of his own words in his own right, somebody who says, let us come together as a people and do the right thing at all times. He said it. And his life, till he turned 82 and returned to glory, shows that truly the man was a disciplined man. Even in his family, look at how straight his wife, and children, they are in the society. You can hardly pinpoint one thing that is untoward that any of his children did. There's not been scandal in his family as a family man. So let's go to the leadership. President Muhammadu Buhari, the late, is a colossus. He was a man of high integrity, a patriot to the core, an example of good leadership for us to see. I still say that some people could decide to express whatever misgivings they could in leadership. Apologies were made at a time when he was, bowing out of presidency, that if in any way he had offended anybody, he tendered his unreserved apology, which is normal for any leader to do, because your ideas, your policies, your managerial, posture could have a negative effect on quite a number of people, as the case may be.
All right,
but
many thanks.
In all, President Muhammadu Buhari was a man of integrity.
All right, so many thanks, Reverend. I'll quickly read out some tributes by the international community. I'll start with the U.S. mission in Nigeria. It says it has described Buhari as a leader whose life was defined by service, discipline, and a commitment to restore integrity to public office. They praised his efforts to strengthen Nigeria's democratic institutions. And the Chinese embassy in Nigeria says Buhari was a resolute leader whose unwavering dedication to Nigeria's unity and progress leaves an enduring legacy. I mean, if you just go, you can go on and on, reading tributes of, so many people, not just Nigerians, who believe that, Buhari did the needful for Nigeria, while he was president, and even before then with other positions that he has had. I'd like to get to Dr. Momale. I want you to speak to us on how you think the late president's, military background influenced his approach to governance and politics. Dr.
Contributors for the various perspectives they have provided. Now, we all know the nature of the military in terms of training, in terms of orientation, in terms of discipline, and the hierarchical order structure. But in addition to that, the personality of an individual always comes into play. And I think both contributed in shaping the person, the character, the behavior, the attitudes, the like and dislikes of President Muhammadu Buhari. Again, I think the struggle for independence and the leadership that arose in the immediate, just before and immediate post-independence Nigeria, the vision and values of those leaders. I'm talking of people like Sir Ahmadu Bello, Sir Tafawa Balewa, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, Anthony Enahoro, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, and the host of their lieutenants made a significant impact in shaping the hearts and minds of the immediate elitist groups that emerge, either in the political class or in the military class. And throughout my interaction with the late Muhammadu Buhari, he has always made a reference repeatedly to the impact that these first generation of Nigerians, he will always refer to some of the behaviors, actions, beliefs, and values of people like Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe, of Chief Anthony Enahoro, of Malam Aminu Kano, of the late Sir Ahmadu Bello, of the late Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. These were routine statements that he was making reference to throughout our several years of close interaction from about 1997, when we became very close with him, up to the very last moment. And I think this has made a lasting legacy on their minds. The second one is the nature of the military training. Like you could see, he had military trainings within Nigeria and overseas. He had the opportunity to interact with various military officers at a very young age across the globe. They participated in many courses that shapes behavior, character, knowledge, and skills And all of this contributed in shaping the late Muhammadu Buhari. If you look at his values, which he held very dear of nationalism, and how he worked with the leadership of the country at that time, I think predominantly under the leadership of General Yakubu Gowon. He always made reference to General Gowon. He adored him, he respects him. He always make reference to President Obasanjo, former President Obasanjo. He respects him, he adores him. He will always make reference to people like the late Wazir in Katsina, the late Sheikh Musa Yar'Adua, who were his senior colleagues from where they were taking instructions and guidance at that time. So I think all of this has contributed immensely in creating a very strong mind of nationalism, open-mindedness, accommodation, and vision. And these have shaped what he has done in life, coupled with the personal discipline he developed within himself. And some of this he clearly stated, that he came to this world with nothing and is going back with nothing. So he sees no reason why he should accumulate wealth. Like the earlier speaker said, we all know that it was when he was federal commissioner in charge of petroleum resources that the Kaduna refinery was being constructed. The Warri refinery was under construction. The Port Harcourt refinery, all under his watch. If you look at the testimony of people like General Olusegun Obasanjo, he particularly made a reference that at one point, former President Buhari came to his office looking so disturbed, and he asked him why. He was remorseful, he didn't want to say, but Obasanjo encouraged him as head of state. He said a friend of his came and asked him that if he were that is in charge of the petroleum ministry, for every barrel of crude that is exported, he will put 10 cents for himself. And he told Obasanjo, he just sat down and he was just looking at him without response. He is telling his commander-in-chief that a friend of him asked him to be corrupt. And Obasanjo told him that, you know, this is how many Nigerians think. You should not be discouraged by that. Concentrate on your work and focus on your work. And today, he has passed away without a single filling station, without a single oil block, without a single estate, or without a single company or factory in Nigeria or overseas in his name. I think this is a demonstration of character, determination, and self-discipline that is very rare among many people in this country.
Dr. Mamale, let's join Dr. Madueke, who of course is a traditional title holder in Ohafia, Ishinka Ohafia. We must pay you our respect for that, sir. The northern chapter of CAN, has come out with also its own tribute, describing the passing of the former president as the end of. Let me just quote, the paper. He says, it marks end of a significant chapter in Nigeria's history. And according to CAN, Northern Chapter, despite, the many opinions about the former president, there is no denying his strong sense of patriotism, discipline, and commitment to national unity. And I'd like for you to speak on his commitment to national unity. Again, I want to refer to the remark of a former Minister of State for Education yesterday. He, recalled an instance where they went to Kaduna and somehow, the former president almost tripped. And, what came out of his mouth was, Jesus. And the former minister said he was surprised. And former president said, you think you hold monopoly to Jesus? I mean, does that tell us anything about his commitment to national unity? I mean, amongst other things that the former president did.
Yeah, very correct. He's a man who was quite neutral to holding himself to any kind of religious bias or ethnic sentiment, as the case may be. Of course, we are still based on his self-discipline, which he took away from his military training and came into politics. And he came into politics as a humanist. And that's why he left behind the Ministry of Humanitarian Care for the country. So to what extent we have succeeded is a discussion for another day. But you can understand that that is his voice. In terms of being focused on unity, well, you can see that when he became the president, he was very much concerned about the unity of this country, starting from where I come from, which is the southeast. He didn't back, even though we know that the vote that came there were quite minimalistic, but he brought development. He brought infrastructural development. Look at the second Niger bridge, which every government will come into office, they will use it for purposes of campaign. But he did not do that for purposes of campaign. He dug deep into making sure that that second Niger bridge, which had been a situation that pained many Easterners, particularly when they are going home on Christmas, was brought into a perfect condition, which is there as an edge. Who had long been pardoned several decades. Nobody remembered them. It was the same Buhari who said no. In order to foster national unity and inclusiveness, that their pension should be paid, and he made sure that all the people who served in the Biafra as police officers or in the Nigerian army, their pensions were paid. And he took upon himself to ensure that the major infrastructural linkages between our Enugu Port Harcourt Expressway, Enugu Onitsha Expressway, Enugu Abakaliki to Cameroon, and many other were put in a functioning mode. And of course, a lot of people from that area were equally blessed with some responsibility in key government office. Somebody that was making analysis the other time talked about how he took people that were carried over from the former government of Goodluck Jonathan, like Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala and Adesina, and then put them into office where they were on the global scene. So he didn't want to bother that, they are coming from the government that we have just taken over, but he ensured that because it's about Nigeria, it's all about inclusiveness. He fought and ensured that these people were put on those global scene. And we still find it difficult to even give him the credit. He was a very stern person who believed that the only way to make success is to be disciplined and focused. I remember the time we were in Lagos for the presidential primaries. All the presidential aspirants, all of them, between the hours of 2 a.m. to 4 a.m., 5 a.m., they left the venue. But Buhari alone sat throughout the night till 10 a.m. Me, who was the director of media, at a point around 5 or 4, I went to shower and take some rest. But Buhari sat there stoic throughout the night. And this man we say is weak, is frail, he can't do this, he can't do that. But you can see that his discipline being, manifested. There's no meeting he comes late. He will always be there before everybody. So we must give it to him that he was a humanist. He's a man that was committed to the unity of this country. And he may not be a flamboyant person that can come and become garrulous and talk in a manner that you may say is charismatic. No. But he means business. He means what he wants to do. And he goes ahead and do it for the interest of mankind, for the interest of humanity. And unfortunately, we kept missing, probably for whatever reason, not getting this fact about him. I don't know why, many people choose to have this kind of gross misunderstanding of who he is. He met quite a challenging situation, and he confronted it head on, like nobody has ever done. if you talk about the military architecture of this country, no president before and after him invested the magnitude of resources that this country invested in armament, in funding the military, in creating the fundamental for our military industrial complex. And it's on record that on many occasions the Air Force will be ordered to go to Innocent in the southeast to get some repairs of their spare parts. He didn't bother whether Innocent is in southeast or whether it's in Kaduna or whether it's in Lagos. For Lord, that is where to go and get our military industrial base, put in a good position. He did that. So he was an inclusive personality that tried to govern. But he wasn't one that is gifted to sweet talk, that will come and talk people into seduction. No, he was not seductive. He stood ground firmly to where he, that's why I said he was a master of the Greek philosophy of Stoicism. So he was a very stoic character. And so what was outside his control, he didn't bother to do anything about it. But that's within his control, he did everything that needed to be done to ensure that the proper result was achieved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madueke. Indeed, you have said so much, and we'd like our viewers to know that they can also send in messages, and the messages will be read, tributes, to the late former president of Nigeria. Just like Dr. Madueke was saying, a lot of people agree that former President Muhammadu Buhari maintained a reputation for simplicity and national pride. I'll quickly read some more tributes now. This one coming from former President Olusegun Obasanjo says, he remembers Buhari as a colleague, a comrade, a cool patriot who played his role diligently as a soldier, administrator, and statesman. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar also honored Buhari's legacy, calling him a cool patriot. And that's my question to you, Reverend. Reading President Olusegun's message and former President Olusegun Obasanjo and former Vice President talking about him being a cool patriot, what do you think they're trying to say there?
No question about that. He was a cool patriot. And being a cool patriot will mean that every decision, every policy, instructions and directives he gave at the time were meant towards patriotism, integrity, nationalism. He was a colossus, a good example of a gentleman being a cool patriot that he really was at the time. In the area of economy, in the area of security, in the area of the environment, as the case may be, General Muhammadu Buhari, retired, now president at the time, came about as someone that was highly respected. He would pass instructions. While he was in the military, he followed through with and by himself. But in the course of him being a democratically elected president, for the time, he did the same and appointed people to man responsibilities to carry out the policies and programs of government, of his government at the time. People did what they would do at the time, So you cannot take it away from President Muhammadu Buhari late that he was not a cool patriot, because patriotism in Nigeria depicts nationalism, depicts belief in the nation state, says that we should not do anything untowards to our country, Nigeria. And that's exactly what Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, stood for.
All right, and we also have some other tributes coming in. This one says from engineer Saeed Tunde Adeyemi, member national MNSE, and I think it's Nigerian Society of Engineers. And he says, Presenter, well done. Please let our leaders know that Buhari didn't have filling stations, houses all over the places. May Allah forgive late Muhammad Buhari's shortcomings, give his family and the nation the heart to bear the irreparable loss. And then this one from Ibrahim Sariki says, Buhari is a courageous, strong, honest leader. May he rest in peace. I am Yunan Ayaro from Gombe State. I condole with the immediate family of Mr. President and Nigerians. I remember him for his disciplined spirit and how he helped us, the farmers, for fertilizers. I benefited from his farming empowering programs. May Allah bless his soul in Aljana Fidaus. And may the soul of our former president rest in peace. We really will miss him, Emmanuel Miracle. These are all tributes from you. We thank you. Please keep them coming. And there's no, doubt about what Dr. Momale and Reverend, and indeed everyone has said about, the former president's lifestyle, private lifestyle. He certainly was not flamboyant, because I had the rare privilege of, seeing that, during one of my trips, to Daura. And of course, I saw his home, very modest home. But Dr. Momale, I'd like us to talk about his governance style, for which the late president, and, some, very funny nicknames. We all know the Baba Ghostlu and all that. When I met him in Daura, I said to him, I had made a case for a government official who needed some form of financial, muscle. So I had asked him if he would use his position now that he was, retired, now that he was no longer the president, to solicit external financial support for this government official. And he said to me, no, I won't do that. He has the competence. That's why he was put there. So I'm just asking, in terms of leadership, governance style, how would you describe that? Is that a plus?
Thank you so much for bringing this topical issue. I think I had the rare privilege of working very closely and being with him at a point in time where he did not have any very strong, heavy national responsibility. And I'm talking of the period between 1999 up to the time Nigerians took him over from some of us, as we used to say, in 2015 when he became the president. At that time, he headed so many institutions and organizations, some of them civil society groups, one of which I was the executive director, and he was the chairman of the board of trustees. He was also the chairman of the Casina Foundation, which was also like a civil group that was trying to promote development. And in northern Nigeria, if you take it for example, there was no single foundation that survived, provided services for over 2 decades, except the Casina Foundation. And that lay credence to his style of leadership. Again, the organizations he founded that were supporting some of the pastoral activities, for which some people began to ascribe that to his ethnic or religious or tribal considerations, but rather he was looking at it as a developmental approach. If you look at his structure of governance and leadership in those, it counts to him. Now, what does former President Muhammadu Buhari believed on? First of all, he believed in institutions, and he believed in processes, and he believes in rules and regulations. Once there is a system, once there are institutions, once there are processes put in place, he expects those processes to work. He expects those systems to work. He expects those aspects of governance to work. And if you speak to his colleagues, with whom, when he was either as the general officer commanding in Jos, you speak to troops under his command, or you speak to officials in the ministries he served, or you come to the Northeast state where he was once a governor, or you speak to members of the Spring Military Council when he was military head of state, they will tell you that former President Muhammadu Buhari believes in collective decision. And once collective decision has been made, he sticks to that decision irrespective of what happens, until those that took that decision, unless they come together as a group and they change that decision, he will never on his own alter that decision. So every decision that is collectively made must be collectively implemented. He believes in that. If there is a process of doing certain thing and you go against or you violate that process, he will not listen to you. If you follow that process to the very end, and in that process, as typical with Nigerians, if you package lies through a process and give to him, he is bound to accept that. And I think this is one of the major weaknesses that affected his presidency from 2015 to 2023, because he's a strong believer in systems, he's a strong believer in institutions. The next thing is that he believes in people that are vested with authority and leadership. When he assigns you a responsibility, irrespective of how young or how old you are, he believes in you, he believes you have the capacity, and he believes you will do the right thing. And unless and until it is proven beyond reasonable doubt that those things you are doing are incorrect, he is bound to stay with you, he is bound to protect you, he is bound to encourage you. And throughout my stay with him, I've never had him scolding a young officer, a young staff, his driver, his domestic staff. Never. He always encouraged and inspired people to do the right thing. And if you do the right thing, he will simply just tell you, please don't do it again. This is how this thing is to be done. So I think this is his quality of leadership. This is his approach to governance. And we clearly saw it during his presidency between 2015 to 2023. Look at the proceedings in the Federal Executive Council. Look at how he allowed the National Assembly to function. Even, unlike dictating leadership on the National Assembly, the National Assembly was able to make leaders of their own. And if you look at the ministries, you look at the parastatals and the MDS, they were all operating. They were making their own decisions. And they communicate these decisions through the Federal Executive Council. So he is a believer in people, he believes in institutions, he believes in systems, he believes in processes. And I think if you look at on the political scene, as leader of the APC, you could clearly see it, that there was internal democracy. He really interfered with the governance of the party and many other things. So these are his style of leadership. This is his approach to governance, that governance should be inclusive, governance should be, Government should be inclusive, and governance should be representative. Governance should be a process of making collective decision. Then the final one I would want to mention is, apart from believing in those systems, processes, and people, he also has a strong feeling that every other person should act in accordance to the law, and that the systems and processes that have been put in place should self-checkmate every other process of governance. So that is why he allowed all of this to go together. And I think in a perfect system where the vast majority of the operators of the system are honest, frank, and dedicated, the leadership qualities of a person like President Muhammadu Buhari will lead to massive development and transformation of societies. Finally, he is one person, and many of us, for example, many people, young people that were close to him or who participated in his campaigns, that were expecting him to remove certain people and bring them on board. He really does that. If he meets you where he met you, he's bound to work with you. So if you look at the presidency when he went in 2015, many people were just expecting him to sack all the workers and bring new ones. For a very long time, almost all of them were there. And the same thing in his military career. He really moved personnel when he is deployed to a formation to put his new ones. That is why you do not hear of Buhari boys in the military. You do not hear of Buhari boys in the military. You hear of Buhari boys in the investments, manufacturing, or other forms of the aspects of the economy of the country. You really hear of Buhari boys in the political landscape. He believes in people, he believes in systems, he believes in processes, and he feels that whoever is there should be able to do what is right, irrespective of his ethnicity, religion, place of origin, or any other consideration.
Dr. Momale, listening to you, very, very touching and very true. You talked about how he dealt with his staff, and that resonated when he was president with the social programs and human development initiatives that came to bear during his administration. Of course, we must mention the National Social Investment Program, where over 50 million Nigerians were impacted. Of course, one of the messages we got was a farmer who talked about benefiting from fertilizer and all of that. We know that over 4 million farmers through so many initiatives in the agricultural sector also benefited. And of course, if you want to talk about education, I mean, it's just countless. But I'll quickly want to take some messages that we have now from our viewers, just to give them an opportunity, to add their voice to this conversation. By the way, if you're yet to send your message, the number is on the screen. You can send either an SMS or a WhatsApp message. This one says, the most patriotic and consistent president we've had. His contribution to security and social investment was second to none. And that's coming from Abubakar Usman from Abuja. Usman says, the most humble and honest president we have had. The rice and rail revolution alone were enormous. And that's coming from Usman from Kubwa in Abuja. Another one says, Buhari's death should be a lesson for all leaders that life is only good for the legacy of existence in terms of infrastructure development in all sectors of humans concerned for easy living and not on personal achievement. May his soul rest in peace. Aspen is the writer there. This one says, former President Buhari was largely misunderstood by some people. His hard stance as a military head of state made people to believe that he could not be a good Democrat. But he did it, to the surprise of many. May God rest his soul. Many messages here. This one says, may Almighty Allah forgive our father and leader, PMB, his shortcomings and grant him Janatu Fidaus. This one says, Late Buhari was an anti-corruption crusader, an epitome of social collective resilience, who stood for the poor, selfless personality with spirit of stoicism, who is not disturbed but about mundane desires. And that's from Ben Ozo. The demise of Buhari has ended the era of another Yaradua. May their spirits of honesty, transparency, and one Nigeria permeate the life of every Nigerian. I have so many messages here. Claire, you want to take some of yours?
I think we'll just take a break, and when we come back, we'll quickly take the remaining of your messages. All right, thank you very much for still staying with us this very solemn Tuesday morning. And we'd like to thank all of you who sent in your tributes and, of course, your messages. I have more. Just before we went on break, Ian Ray took some. I have more, and let me start with Warrant Officer Ibrahim A.M. of the Nigerian Air Force. And he says, may the soul of the late Major General Muhammadu Buhari, retired former President of Nigeria, rest in peace. We remember his leadership, service, and contributions to our nation. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family, friends, and loved ones during these difficult times. May his legacy continue to inspire and guide us. I personally missed that gentle officer. Now, late President Muhammadu Buhari was a down-to-earth man. I like him for his simplicity and humility. May his gentle soul rest in perfect peace. Larry from Ogun State. Now, greetings to you all at NTA. PMB is a man of integrity. He has a very clear agenda to fight corruption and promote accountability. He lived a simple life and was content with what he had. May Almighty forgive him all his shortcomings. Engineer Adeniro Idris. Thank you, and I'd like to direct my question now to Dr. Madekwe. And in line with Engineer Adeniro's observation, and of course, Warrant Officer Ibrahim A.M., and this is in relation to how the former president handled security matters. Some events he's been, criticized for the way he had handled, and talking about, the issues in the Southeast, the ensigns and all that. But he was a man of system. And because he was a man of system, he didn't want to interfere. So should he now take all the blames, for the vacuum that some of his aides, had exploited?
Thank you for having me once again. Like I mentioned earlier on, there's this contraption between leadership and followership. And many a times we, the followers, are always blaming our leaders. And at this point, I will ask that we pause and go backward and think, how come we are always at followers, we're always wise by hindsight. We always say, okay, this leader was better by hindsight. But when that administration was in place, you know, we had all sorts of appellatives, all sorts of names, all sorts of derisive names to say that that very administration is not working. So if we're able to pause and reflect backwards, we should also know that as followers, there might be some judgmental error from our own side, and not just putting everything on leadership and saying that leadership is the one that is at fault. Now, when Buhari came this time around as the civilian head of president of the country, he decided to take certain cues from when he was military, head of state. And we all know what he suffered and how he left the office. And therefore, he felt that he is going to abide as a new Democrat, which many people didn't even give him the credit that he is truly a born-again Democrat. They still saw him from that perspective, he hadn't, despot. So he kept trying to prove that he's not a despot, he's not a dictator, he's a Democrat. And the more he tries to now bend backwards to show that he's capable of complying in a rule-based system, the more we find out that as followers, we are not, following up with what we need to do in order that the outcome will be, graciously rewarding for everybody. There's nothing, like I said, he is a master of stoicism, so there's nothing he can do once something is beyond his control. He understands that which is within his control, and he deals with it head on. But once it's not within his control, he has the capacity to say, okay, I accept it. That is the way, and there's nothing I can do about it. So when he became the military head of state, like I said earlier on, he invested into the military architecture of this country more than any president before or after him have done. It is there. If Boko Haram was completely at a point, he made even the Maiduguri the headquarters for all the army chiefs at Brutai was from Borno State, where his own village was even under the occupation. So what else can you do? He's a Kanuri man. Now go and liberate your place. The chief of air staff, all of them, they were from that sector, and a whole lot of funding. And we all saw the record. We all saw when Sambisa forest became, ground zero, and all the progress made there. But as the progress was being made, the Northwest was also erupting. And we don't situate this thing within the global geopolitics, realizing that when what happened to Libya happened, then a lot of arms and ammunition were released from Libya into the sub-Saharan, area, through Chad, through Mali, through Burkina Faso, with porous borders. This came down to Nigeria, to Chad, to Cameroon, to other places. So I said, and of course the insurgency thing, the religious Islamic, bodies globally trying to have a foothold, because Nigeria is a large, populous, nation. So there must be that kind of, discrepancy. And we also have seen a former president saying that no president can fix Nigeria in 4 years' time. And so one can only say that to the best of his ability, he was able to develop that. Like I said, today we have a very strong military, well equipped, more than it was before he came into that position. So the military infrastructure is enough to help us. Yes, we know, as we are containing the Northwest, insurgency either in the Southwest or the Southeast is rearing its ugly head. The whole country, the farmer headers issue in Benue and all that. But again, some other speakers have said that sometimes these things are internal. So the head of state, like I said, can only do the much because he is a Democrat and he wanted to say he's going to work within rules. And as followers, probably, we also have our challenges.
All right, many thanks, Dr. Maduekwe. As we begin to round up this conversation now, I'd like to get to Dr. Momale. I mean, since the news filtered in that late President Muhammadu Buhari has passed on, we've seen world leaders, pay their tributes, all kinds of comments. Some have described it as a devastating loss, not just to Nigeria, but of course to the international community. I would like you to, speak about how the late President Buhari's relationships with other world leaders impacted Nigeria's international relations and global relevance.
I think the influence, acceptability, and respect accorded to late President Muhammadu Buhari is entirely a West African issue. If you travel across countries within West Africa, from Benin Republic, along the coast until you get to the coast of Mauritania, if you move from Chad across to the Sudan, in Central Africa, Central African Republic, Congo, into Eastern and Northern Africa, you will only recognize how much our former president was adored, liked, and cherished among the citizens of these countries. Not only the leadership, but the citizens. If you look at the 2015 campaigns, as well as the 2019 campaigns, you will be surprised to see his posters, his pictures, and his portraits in remote rural areas of countries like Ghana, Burkina Faso, Mali. I've personally seen them. And wherever you traveled, just like football legends, they ask you about football legends of Nigeria. They will also ask you about one of Nigeria's legendary leaders, Muhammadu Buhari, especially after he ventured into politics. For the leadership, you could see the statements from former presidents that he closely worked with. I think I saw statements from former President Barack Obama, the UN Secretary General, the African Development Bank President Femi Adesina, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, Amina Mohammed, and so many other global leaders. Kufuor was in London, and if you look at how he related with the African leaders during his tenure, how they met Nigeria and him as one of the areas, one of the people they always seek for advice and counsel, you know that he got a lot of respect from many, many African leaders, and by extension, the global community.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Momale. Let's get back to the studio now. Reverend Martins, I'm very, interested in how you would evaluate the former president's, policies vis-a-vis economy. I mean, he was president at the time when COVID struck. He was president at the time when, for the first time, we had recessions, back to back and all of that. He was also president at the time when, exchange rates climbed to the highs, and then the forex market went haywire. But he was also president at a time when we recovered back to back. Would you say his policies were positive for the economy, or did they impact, how would you evaluate it?
I would like to speak concerning the what happened actually to our economy, and of course the the world economic challenges we had internationally that had effect on Nigeria's economy, because Nigeria cannot be an island unto herself. We are a citizen of the entire world. But one cannot actually recall a time that we recovered from those, happenstances. Like you rightly said, the COVID challenge that palmated, our economy, brought the entire world to a near standstill. 2020, up for about 2 years, as the case may be. And then the entire, challenges we have in the Sahel, in terms of security, that brought about, a glut in our, economy. Despite that, the government of President Muhammadu Buhari at the time still brought about capital projects. They were working. Over 80 known and seen verifiable capital projects in the area of education, in the area of works, bridges, roads. They were working. They were doing what they could, managing the situation at the time. And whoever wants to believe, as I said, is free to believe, because facts are there. If we have the time, one can reel them out. I have them typed out, but we don't have the time for that. So you can check by yourself.
Yes, I can read out quite a number of them, as according to someone, I don't know who did that, but it's quite exhaustive. Like you said, more than 80 infrastructure projects. Lagos-Ibadan Road is there, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, rail, Second Niger Bridge, local bridge, Zungero Hydro, and so on and so forth. But go ahead.
All right. So the economy of Nigeria was, had the effect because we had a problem internationally. The world economy was challenged, and Nigeria being a part of the international community. Despite that, we waged through with time. And the challenges we had at the time is also what we're looking at currently, to which the current administration had taken a very serious and drastic step by removing the subsidy, so that we can have something to stand upon in terms of monetary values to deliver dividends of democracy. And projects are ongoing as we speak. So Nigeria as a country is not living by herself, but we're a part of the global economy. So whatever affects the world equally affects Nigeria. Gradually, we are recovering. And in time, we'll get there.
You talked about, sorry, Ingrid, you talked about education. There's no doubt about infrastructural development. There are visible projects there, to talk. And most importantly, his achievements in the area of rail transport modernization. It's a landmark. We all know. For the first time, I personally had a ride, via the rail service and all that. But in terms of education, it was an era where you had a lot of strikes, ASU strikes and unfulfilled, contracts between government and, the academics and all that. How would you explain that? What happened? Is it part of the system?
Well, it has to do with the content of the agreements. Yes, agreements were signed between ASU and government over time, over decades. And the government of Muhammadu Buhari came into power. They looked at the content of such agreements and looked at the realities of the economy at the time. Are these content, are they permissible within the challenges we had in the economy or not? So we have to be patriotic as a people. It is not enough to demand for whatever, but we need to look at the reality and, try to look at how we can manage the situation and accept, what's available for us. Gradually and surely, all wrongs that happened at the time, are being put right. Currently, you don't find ASU going on strike because the current administration have been committed and dedicated to doing that. It is because you and I and us have decided to understand, that the effect of subsidy removal will mean that government will have more money to do quite a lot of things and then accede to the demands of ASU and all the other necessities, in governance.
Many thanks, Reverend. Because of time, we'll have to quickly wrap up the conversation. By the way, to all of you who sent in messages, we see your messages, we acknowledge them, and we do sincerely appreciate you for sending those messages. If we have time, of course, before the end, we'll take them. But I'd like to get to Dr. Madueke now as we round up the conversation. What role do you think President Buhari's legacy will play in shaping the direction of Nigerian politics and governance in the years to come?
First of all, he made history by being the very first leader of coalition to take away a sitting government in office. You can't take that away from him. He showed that you need to be focused, you need to have a long-term plan, you need to be determined, and you need to believe in yourself. You need to know this is your core area of strength, which in his own was the common man. He believed in the common man, and the common man identified with him. And so, at the end, it was the common man that were able to give him that constant 12 million votes. But it's unfortunate that the revisionists want to now say, with the 12 million, he could have become the president of the country at any given time. Well, that's not the truth. That's not the case. We are aware that collaboration and alliance, which was spearheaded by Tinubu, made the current president, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, made it possible for him to eventually have the opportunity of being the president of this great country. So it is not right. And he himself even has acknowledged it. He has always been humble to say that without the contribution of President Ahmed Tinubu, he wouldn't have been president. So I will request that, lesson learned, let us not reverse history. Let us do him that honor of keeping to what he said. He has publicly admitted in his own humility that the current president of Nigeria made it possible for him. Because I was there as the head of the media when we arrived Lagos that very week on Thursday. There was no president. There was no presence of former President Buhari at the Tasmania Balogun Stadium. All you saw there was Atiku, Kwakwanso. Even Abga had good presence. But I tell you, by Friday evening when we were pasting the posters, some of us came with very anemic-looking posters from Abuja. In the evening, by the wall of Tasmania Balogun, I saw a beautiful lady that evening, fair complexion, with some armed police people behind him, directing pasting of giant posters of President Mohamed Buhari. I was surprised. Who will be this fair lady this night, 11:30 p.m., that Thursday, penultimate, the week of the primary? Somebody told me that is the deputy governor to Lagos State. That was the deputy governor to Fashola. By the evening on Friday, Saturday, the whole area of the stadium was now filled up with LED vehicles, advertorials, and everywhere. By the time you came to the stadium on Saturday, all you can see all over that stadium was now BMP.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry to interject. We just have to take a last comment from Dr. Momale. Dr. Momale, please, if you will appreciate if you can make your response, reasonably very short, in less than 60 seconds, if you may. How would you like the former president to be immortalized?
I think Nigerians, particularly in the academic community, need to research former President Muhammadu Buhari, document his legacies, and let it be one of the lessons that we will take forward as a country. Lessons of humility, lessons in self-service, lessons in patriotism and nationalism, and lessons in inclusiveness and collective approach to governance. I think this is very important. Sadly, he did not write his own personal memos, so we will lose a lot. But I will urge the family to make available some of his personal records so that they can be accessed and we'll be able to convert them into a national intellectual asset.
Many thanks, Dr. Momale. It's time to go. Reverend Martins, in 10 seconds, the last words.
General Muhammadu Buhari, Mr. President X, was a man of high integrity, unassuming, a gentle Democrat, someone who truly, asked people who delegated responsibilities, and then was an institution of study per person. And I know with the likes of him coming up in governance, Nigeria shall be the better for us.
All right, many thanks, Reverend Korede Martins, a development expert. Many thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
We do appreciate you. And of course, from our Maiduguri studio, Dr. Salim Omale, many thanks once again for being our guest. And finally, I'd like to appreciate Dr. Chidia Madukwe Ishinaka Ohafia, former Director of Media Buhari Support Organization. It was indeed a pleasure to have you on the program. So that's Good Morning, Nigeria, this solemn Tuesday. Thank you so much for watching. And of course, there'll be more programs reflecting the times and life of the late president.
And so today, the remains of former President Muhammadu Buhari goes the way of all mortals, as he will be laud in his ancestral home in Daura, Katsina State. So on behalf of the NTA management and staff, we extend our condolences to the family and to all Nigerians and everyone who mourn him today. I am Claire Adelabu Abdurrazak.
And I'm Yenwei John. Have a great day.